protein is that number one macro that they're not prioritizing. And yet you're like, this is the holy grail.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the First Optimal podcast. Really excited. We have Taylor Murphy with us today. She's a health coach, and excited to have her part of the podcast with a lot of different insightful things, a lot of hands-on, detailed work she's done herself, not only with her clients but through her own journey. And so just pumped to kind of get things going and jump into the details of the episode today. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joe. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So talk to us a little about like just kind of overview, like how long have you been doing this whole coaching journey, and just tell us a little bit more about your experience and kind of what got you to where you are today.
I think I got into fitness probably around like 5 or 6. I was the one in the neighborhood that would make my friends do push-ups and crunches before we went and played. So I think it's just always been instilled in me. I absolutely love fitness. So for me, it's like when somebody's like, oh, I don't feel like working out. I'm like, what is that? You know, for me, it's like, it's just always been a part of my life. I grew up playing every single sport possible in school. And so very athletic and just love being active. That led into the sports nutrition. That's what I studied in school. So then I combined the love of activities and fitness with the science of nutrition and kind of the benefits of it. And that's kind of where I started. I started my first company at 17. It was still called Tailored for You. And I did a private chef and personal training. And that's kind of how it started. So fast forward to almost 25 years later, you know, it's like, it's still been doing this and I love it. I grew up in Oklahoma, but obviously with my niche, nobody here at the time wanted to be healthy. So I moved to California where it was more acceptable. And I was a private chef there and a fitness trainer. That turned into being introduced to the competition world. I earned my pro card and competed in the Olympia multiple times, was top 20 in the world in the IFBB bikini division. So that took my fitness and nutrition to kind of the optimal, like professional level. I ran one of the largest teams in the world where I coached athletes on how to do this. So this has been my full-time job from the beginning. It's something I have always done. So I have decades of experience with all different kinds, men, women of all ages. And then I retired from competing because I realized that's kind of a needy sport. I love it. That's a great world. But I kind of wanted to help more women just understand, hey, if you don't have the time, the energy, the money to do a competition, yet you still want to look something like that, how can I bring all my knowledge to you and make it relate to your life? So that's where I then kind of retired from that extreme sport side of it and took the things I've learned, but then also kind of tweaked it to the modern woman of we want to have fun on weekends. We have kids, we work. So no, I don't want to eat from a Tupperware boiled chicken and broccoli, but how do I have abs still, but have mimosas as well? And so that's kind of how, let's say, I tailor people's plans is it's got to be something for real life that's sustainable for busy women, for busy moms who want to look fit and tone, but have a real life. So I kind of combined all that for them. And that's my style, especially, I know we've talked before, especially with women as they exit their 20s and go into their 30s, 40s, 50s plus. It's not just about calories anymore. We have to think more on hormones. So that's kind of now where I'm at is I really go more in depth on the hormone side of things to target stubborn belly fat and still make it a lifestyle, not just a crash diet.
Yeah, no, I think it's really always interesting when or an added benefit, if you will, when someone comes from a high level in their fitness career. In your case, being in the physique sports, to look a certain way and know how to do that, which is, as you mentioned, very, very extreme, not sustainable for a lot of people. Then you go to school, getting the extra education on the science, nutrition, et cetera, and of course, a lot of practical knowledge that you picked up through your competing years. And then you can say, okay, well, how do I reverse engineer this? Like, how can I back this down a little bit and apply it to help women every day? And then even like yourself, for those who don't know, you have a new addition to your family recently, right? And so you kind of
I did.
live the journey as well. So how old is your little one, by the way?
She just turned 1 this month.
Okay.
So, and I'm finally feeling like, you got your body back. It's one of those things to where I had such an amazing pregnancy. It was my first one and done, no more. Loved it, but don't ever want to do it again. But it was one of those things where I loved that I got to experience that, because I personally grew through, I'm more compassionate a little bit
Mm.
to my clients, because I'm like, look, I understand different phases. And that just completely blew open the doors for the true hormonal changes and the effects that they do have on us. And you could be hitting as many steps as possible. You could be training 6 days a week. You could be in a calorie deficit. And yet, if those hormones aren't balanced, you're really not seeing anything move. And so now I personally understand how kind of frustrating that can be when it's almost like the scale doesn't line up to your hard work. And I know as
Right.
women, that's all we want. We just want that number to reflect as much work that we're putting in.
Right.
And, sometimes that's not the case. I know I always, preach to my clients that the scale is not the only indicator of progress, but I still, relate to them that we want to see that. So for me moving forward now, especially again, just having the baby, it's just opened my eyes to truly how important the hormone panel is. And when you tap into more fat loss, not just weight loss, but when you
Sure.
want to get to that fat loss, I always tell them, like, burning fat is a benefit. Like, it's earned. It's not something that just happens because you cut your calories. You
Right.
could lose weight cutting calories, but that could be important muscle. It could be, all these other factors. But fat loss, now this is a true science, and it does take, of course, the right macros, the right training. But the most important key, I think, now learned through my experience is that hormone balance.
Yeah, and I think, as you were mentioning, for those who don't know, the audience that's listening in, or if you haven't had a chance to check out Taylor's content, we'll definitely have it all in the show notes. But um, competing in a physique sport, as you know, but for the audience that maybe isn't as familiar with it, like, it is crucial that you're dropping fat, not lean body mass, not lean tissue,
Yeah.
because you're still trying to have that sculpted, physique, if you will, that's showing the right balance of that healthy look with some muscularity there. And so I think that's a great utility for a lot of people out there, that even if they're like, well, I don't look like her, or I'm never going to compete. I'm, X amount overweight, or whatever the case may be. If we're talking fat loss, it's like, no, 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 no. There's still some principles that can be layered into there with, general, dare I say, general population, right? Like someone who's
Yeah.
not a competitive athlete. But that being said, I'm curious if there's a couple like tools or resources, and you may have to go back in the memory a little bit, when you were first getting into coaching, that you're like, oh, I remember I could take this from my competition days, kind of apply it with my clients. Like, what are some things out there that you're sharing with clients in these conversations when they're first coming in, and relates to what you just described between weight loss and fat loss?
I think the number one thing here lately that I love being able to coach hundreds of women online all over the world, because for me, it's like I have content at my fingertips, because
Mhm.
every day I'm getting these questions from women, to where for me, like you said, I've done this for 25 years. So it's just common sense to me. What's a carb? What's a fat? All that. But when I'm getting these questions from real women who want to know, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. We have an audience. So I simplify it to, if they want, at any age, at any range, you have 100 pounds to lose or 5 pounds to lose, I like to say there's 5 pillars of fat loss, my 5 non-negotiables, to where it's not something that's unattainable, but we have, I would say, number 1, hitting 10,000 steps, right? Being active. That's something that we should all strive for. Number 2, eating enough protein, getting your goal body weight. So if you are overweight, it's hitting your goal body weight, not where you're at now, but where you want to be. And same if you're underweight, trying to building up. So that's the second one. The third one is going to be getting a gallon of water. I'm the type of person that thinks water is a miracle drug that's most underrated, because a lot of ailments stem from just being dehydrated. So that's 3. Number 4 would be just hitting 3 strength training sessions per week. Everybody wants to start off with 5 or 6 and go crazy, but minimum just 3 sessions with some weights. So that way you're putting that kind of like tension on the muscles. And then the 5th one would be 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I think those are really important factors for anybody striving to get healthier, to lose weight, to lose fat, and to make it realistic. Yes, hitting all 5 is a perfect day. But we're not always perfect, and that's okay. We don't have to be, but we have to be consistent. And how we stay consistent, I tell my clients, is just hitting 3 out of those 5. If they're stuck at work, meetings, and can't hit their steps, they better make sure they got their protein, their water, and a strength training session. If, they were out at meetings and their meals got messed up, fine, that's okay. But you better make sure you got your steps, your water, and get good sleep. It's just making it realistic for people of any age, any busyness of life, to still be obtainable. So those are kind of the 5 things that I push, and you just got to aim to get 3 of those 5 every single day, and you're taking steps forward for losing fat, balancing hormones, and just making yourself in a healthier state for weight loss.
No, I like that, because what's the there's a saying out there, right? Like, compliance is the science, or whatever. There's a bunch of those like taglines and sayings, to where I like how you're framing it, though, to say we're not perfect. 3 to 5, 3 out of the 5. So I'm giving you 5. Like, where sometimes I think people feel so defeated and frustrated because they're not doing all 5. And of course, especially someone who's goal driven and on this journey, they're going to want to do all 5, but it makes sense to have a coach right out of the gate saying, listen, life happens, let's adjust these things. So I think that can be really helpful, because a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear from coaches that and practitioners that I'm interviewing is, most of the time it's more of I don't want to say most, but there's a mental block there where it's like, and so is that something you would say you're experiencing a lot, specifically with women, like a mental block as far as?
For sure, because I feel women get in this all or nothing, and they feel that let's even if they say start with me, they feel that if they do not weigh everything and put it in Tupperware, that I can't even start this diet yet. And I'm like, no, grab a piece of chicken versus a bag of chips. You won today. That's a win. All right. You don't have to be you don't have to weigh everything out. You don't have to log everything every single day to just start. It's just whole food sources. Your win of the day is making one smart swap. Again, instead of grabbing a protein bar, make a real meal, real food. And that right there is a win for the day. I'm a Leo. I'm a task-driven person. So I like having that type of structure and like marking it off, feeling accomplished. So that is the kind of the reason with that 3 out of 5 approach, is that we are busy. And so if you felt like you failed because you didn't get all 5, then you'd be frustrated and maybe not even try to do it the next day. So it's just one of those things that we all need a little grace for ourselves, but we still have to push. And I think that's kind of where, when I went from training elite pro athletes to busy women, and nothing wrong with busy women and moms, but I'm like, okay, I went from Olympics to the YMCA. How do I relate? Because I kind of started off in my first coaching approach like a Jillian Michaels. I felt like I was a little harsh, because that's how, like if you're a football coach, that's how you speak to the athletes. They need that push. but sometimes the moms, the women, and let's say our average client, they don't agree, they don't respond to that style. You have to be more lenient with them and more motivational, I guess, versus the hardcore athlete. So I've had to adjust my coaching style to figure out a way to meet in the middle. So that's where we kind of come up with those type of things to help keep people motivated.
Well, yeah, I think no, it's a great approach, because I think a lot of times, specifically with someone who's starting a new health journey, even if they have some decorated past, like they were I was this person in college, whatever the case is, like, yeah, your body's changed and your responsibilities have changed, like, I know just from like personal experiences, like, my wife was a college athlete, and did 2 different sports in college. And when ebbs and flows with kids and life and all that,
Mhm.
it's like, it can throw a wrench in things. And I remember being a snot-nosed little 20-year-old punk trainer with my little fancy degree, thinking I know it all, and competed in physique sports myself back then. And I remember my clients would ask, like, what does walking count? And I'm like, no, it doesn't count. Like, you need to get your cardio in. We need to do this interval. We need to do this, do that. And now
Yeah.
it's like, what is my wife and I, our bread and butter every morning is we go for a walk. It's like,
Yeah.
but again, of course, this is over 20 years ago. One, there wasn't as much research out there on all the benefits, like post-meal walks, and all the
Mhm.
other health benefits weren't really as prevalent, I guess. Movement was always, but also I was just immature. So it was just like, but learning how to scale it back and meet people where they are. And then I think another thing you said there that I hear often is understanding your clients' like inner voice. Cause if they're really hard on themselves
Mhm.
already, it's like, the shame game can just compound effect over time and just really cause a lot of issues relative to how they're approaching these things.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, I
that's
think that makes a lot of
something
sense.
that I think you learn as a coach. I mean, I spent years training people like in person to then go to online. That is how you kind of know those inner thoughts and what they're doing. And I have some clients that, I like them to send their weight every day or every week. And then I have some clients that I understand maybe the scale is a trigger, and
Sure.
we don't need that. I want them to send me, how was their sleep? How was their energy this week? So you learn what might trigger somebody to where if they do step on that scale and it's not down, it's over. The day is gone and they're not even getting a workout in, because why try? And
Yeah.
so it is very helpful to understand that and then be able to tailor that to each client's need.
Yeah. No, yeah, it makes sense. As far as, just to kind of unpack some of the pillars you're talking about, if we start with protein, um, it's often reported, there's 3 of the things that women undereat, and we'll start with the first one, at least that I hear a lot of, is protein.
Yes.
I'm curious, a couple follow-up questions there. How low are the typical clients coming to see you, would you say, maybe as a percent? Like, how far off are they from how much protein you would like them to have, or they should have to be in their ideal state that they would like to be in, versus how they're coming to you? Like, how far off are most women when they're coming to you?
Yeah, this was something that shocked me just over the years. You think, you let's just be real, right? You see somebody who's overweight and you're like, man, they're eating too much.
Right.
And the shocking factor is, I would say it is literally probably 80% to 20% that come to me are severely chronically under eating. And yet they have 20 plus pounds to lose. So
Mm,
that's then when you're like, what, to where it starts to not make sense to our common sense, because that's not how the body works. And
mhm.
protein is that number one macro that they're not prioritizing. And yet you're like, this is the holy grail. But I think women just either in attempts to not eat too much all day, keep the calories down, not to look bloated, they snack, they graze. And that's the worst thing, because number
Right.
one, you're not getting ever a full meal. You're not getting enough protein by doing that snacking or grazing. And then number two, every time you snack and graze, you're spiking insulin. And when insulin is present, fat burning stops.
Right.
So the key is, protein is crucial for muscle building, but it's crucial for lowering that insulin spike, no matter what you're eating. One thing I
Right.
tell women is, they're like, well, I'll have an apple. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but let's pair it with a protein hat or a
Right.
cap. Because
Right.
if you have an apple, but at least you had an apple with a protein shake. Well, now you've lowered that insulin spike of the natural fructose in fruit, which is not bad. But when we learn pairing even of macros and how we can manipulate the response in the body, boom, right there. Now you've turned just an insulin spiking apple into at least a meal that could be considered a meal because you added protein to it, even if it was just a scoop of collagen in your water with that apple. You're going to be lowering that spike to where you can eat it. You got protein, and now your body's coming back down to baseline to be in a fat burning position again. Because when we, like I said, when we just graze and you have a handful of nuts and you have the apple and then you have Starbucks coffee, and then that is just a yo-yo effect of your hormones, specifically that insulin and cortisol. And now you've not had one solid full meal. You've not really eaten a lot, but this is why you still have that lower belly pooch.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot. The other one I wanted to ask, do you, what are you using as far as a recommendation for protein amount? Do you usually look at, because you mentioned like, I think you said ideal body weight. So
Mhm.
could you give examples of like what you're typically using when someone starts off, like a protein target, or how do you come up with that number?
Yeah, so it's definitely based off of obviously their goals, but let's just say you are 150 pounds woman and you want to get to 120. I would put you at, normally they want you having your body weight and protein per day. If you want to cut, you do your goal body weight. So you would want to aim for 120.
Mm,
For me, I like that approach, but for me, that typically isn't how I set it up. That's kind of the normal, what you would hear.
sure.
But I actually like to keep the protein higher, because then I'm able to get a calorie deficit without sacrificing muscle loss. But if I bring maybe the carbs down a little bit more, I have room for higher protein still. So the two main ones that I like to focus on is proteins and fats. Minimum your body weight, or at least, let's say you're 200 pounds.
Mm,
Yes, as a woman, 200 grams of protein is a lot on your system, and that's a lot of food. So I would say, hey, let's bring it down to more of your goal weight. But then if somebody was, 110 pounds, I'd like them to be having a little bit
sure.
higher So, that's where I do customize it for each client. But I would say minimum for your woman, you want your goal weight. And then just hands down, don't go lower than 50 grams of fat. That's kind
Gotcha.
of where we start. The carbs, those are where you play around with how much you're exercising that day, how much energy, right? That's just our energy form that we can play around with. But protein and fats are kind of my stables that I set first.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And then what are some like, do you have any tips or things that you recommend if say a woman they're used to eat, they don't even know how much protein, or it's double digit 60, 80 grams a day maybe, and you're trying to get them to say 120, 130. Are there certain things you find that are accessible and easy for maybe even the audience out there is looking like, what are some ways, some hacks that maybe I can try to increase my protein intake? What are some things that you've used or suggestions you've made?
So the number one thing I love is collagen, because everybody wakes up and has a cup of coffee, right? I mean, we
Right.
all love our coffee, and collagen is something you can add to your coffee, unflavored, whatever, but it can add 8 grams of protein. So these are
Right.
just little things that I like to have my clients sneak in more protein without feeling like, oh, I have to eat, 8 more ounces of chicken. Well, you're not up to that yet, but everybody can just add a scoop of collagen to their coffee. Or for me, I love Vita Authority, and I add it to my Greek yogurt to flavor the Greek yogurt. So I get a
Hmm.
plain Greek yogurt, throw some chia seeds in there, some berries, and then I do a scoop of like strawberry collagen. So now you took Greek yogurt that was already healthy, high protein, and added even more. So instead of it even being 20 grams, at least have 30, but it wasn't any more quantity you had to eat. So I
Right.
think those types of little tricks, sipping bone broth, just little things like that I still consider not being highly processed types of additives that help just sneak in more things. I'm known for baking with protein powder. I have all these cookbooks about it.
Oh
And that's
yeah,
what
I was going to ask you about that soon. Yeah, I was
yeah,
going to
that's
get
what
to
I
that.
teach my clients is, every night I'm having cookies or brownies or peanut butter balls or something like that, but I'm using healthy ingredients and I'm using all my protein powders while doing it. So let's see, my favorite 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, when you're in that snacky era, need some energy. My favorite, a cup of coffee with a scoop of collagen in it and a protein cookie. Whew, it's not only fun, but it just feels good, and it's just healthy ingredients where you're having a little protein boost, but it just felt like coffee and a cookie, so that's the type of thing that makes this life sustainable and not boring. And again, that was a sweet treat that also gave me 20 grams of protein. So it's little things like that I teach my clients how to just sneak in things, or, bake your own cookies, make your own protein bars at home, and, make muffins and all that fun stuff that are at least packed with nutrients.
No, I mean, yeah, you were saying something about the coffee thing I was going to comment on. Cause I have a chocolate collagen. I mean, it
Oh,
tastes,
yeah.
yeah, it's like putting like a chocolate snack in my coffee.
Yeah.
I'll even do a lot of times I'll do, like 2 scoops. And like you said, I think it's 16 grams. And then, it's got a great flavor. And, I don't usually get much more, but because of just the caffeine amount that I want to have, I'm pretty sensitive to
Yeah.
caffeine, but like the taste, I want to get 2 or 3 more cups. I'm like, man, this is really, really good. So I think that's a great one. And then I was going to pull this up really quick here. So for those listening on audio, we're pulling up the protein pumpkin chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Because you mentioned you were culinary training you've been through.
Yes.
Is that what yeah.
So I have been a private chef out in Beverly Hills, out in Malibu, in Houston, Texas, and I've written cookbooks. I've been featured in magazines. I was in Oxygen magazine and Health and Fitness, as known as the fitness chef. And so I would just put out weekly recipes. It was kind of back before baking with protein powder was cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I started. And so now it's just really fun to see more people being so open to that, and just kind of using it as a staple. For me, it's like my protein powder is in place of like maybe a heavy flour, to where you're still getting the gooiness and the flavor and the taste. But, nowadays they have such great proteins on the market. I personally love Sun Warrior because it's a whole food source. It's plant-based. I'm not vegan, but in my protein powder, I just really like it to be plant-based because it's just kind of like there's no dairy in it. So again, we're not getting into any hormone disruptors. There's no artificial sweeteners. There's no chemicals. There's no gums. It's so clean. I put it in my baby's bottle. That's what she loves. Just a tablespoon, not a full scoop. But it's one of those that you're like, when you find a good protein powder, because I know that's really hard, and we all kind of waste money going through buying all these tubs, and then you get frustrated because some don't taste good. And then I'm, always telling my clients, you don't have to use the one I use. Just make sure you read the ingredients. Just make sure if it is going to be a whole food source of protein, like the collagens and the protein, just make sure you know what's in it, and make sure they didn't add sugars or chemicals or artificial sweeteners that are going to be bloating you or setting you back as well. So that's kind of another key point I point out, is just the ingredients matter so much more than calories.
Yeah. And I mean, I like this one. Just for those who are listening on audio. So pumpkin chocolate chip cookies, you're cooking them in an air fryer. They're gluten-free, quarter cup gluten-free flour, quarter cup pure canned pumpkin, 1 to 2 scoops of Sun Warrior pumpkin spice protein, quarter cup keto monk fruit maple syrup, 3 to 4 tablespoons of almond milk, 1 whole egg, 1 tablespoon of vanilla, quarter dark chocolate chips, quarter stevia powder sweetener, 1 tablespoon pumpkin pie spice, half tablespoon of cinnamon, half tablespoon nutmeg, pinch of sea salt, 60 calories, 5 grams carbs, 5 grams protein, 2 grams of fat. And pumpkin is like definitely this time of year is my
Oh, yeah.
favorite because I love the pumpkin stuff. And then you
I
got
love
these
the pumpkin.
cupcakes too, like these cheesecake bites. What is going on here?
Now, those are my absolute favorite. It's so quick and easy. that is very good as breakfast. When I make those, I end up eating it with my coffee in the morning for breakfast.
Oh yeah. This looks amazing.
And it's, it's typically stuff you have in your pantry. It's nothing crazy. So that's another benefit, but it's just really quick and easy and nice to have. Plus, pumpkin's a great source of antioxidants and fiber, which if we're going back to macros women undereat, fiber would be my number 2. I think
I was
they
just about to
lack
say that.
protein and they lack fiber. And I think that is another one that's very underrated because you have a digestion effect. It boosts your metabolism. It helps you stay satiated longer. But fiber also helps excrete excess estrogen. So this is a crucial one for women that are dealing with stubborn weight.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's what are you seeing? Because I was going to say earlier I was talking about the 3, and I think like the 3 I hear a lot of and see a lot of from even just people I'm interviewing or guests on the podcast here is specifically in women's health is protein, fiber, and then water seems to be the number 3.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at fiber, what are you typically seeing? Like how low are women primarily that you're seeing under eating fiber?
I think that what I'm seeing most of is around maybe 10 grams per day. And I like to get them up to 20 to 30 grams per day. And that's stuff again from chia seeds, flax seeds, basically any type of nut and seed. And then, of course, most important would be the cruciferous veggies, the broccoli, the cauliflower, the kale, leafy greens, anything like that, because it has the DIM in it, which is that diindol methane. And that is so important for women balancing their hormones naturally. So that's just another reason why just adding more fiber is such a natural way to balance hormones, to feel full. I think now the term is called volume eating, right?
Sure.
Where it's like, I teach them, start with the protein. When you're about to eat, pick a protein. What is it? Chicken, turkey, Greek yogurt, fish. And then high volume food, meaning those leafy greens, those veggies, those, fruits even. But that's kind of where you want to build the bulk of your meal. Then you have those nice either side of the healthy carbs or your fats that you top that with. But I think that's just the easiest way to simplify building a healthy plate.
Yeah, no, and it's you mentioned a few already, but are there any other fiber hacks? As you mentioned, like I think you said, is it chia seeds you said or you use, and then are there any others that come to mind for people out there?
The main one is chia seeds because I feel like I add that into my baking. Like you can add that into those cookies even. Hemp seeds, flax seeds. These are things that, again, they're not adding bulk to your meal, so you don't have to feel full, but they're adding omegas are amazing for chia seeds. So especially for my clients that are vegan or they don't like fish, like salmon or something, I make sure that they get chia seeds so that way they're getting enough of those omegas in more of a plant-based form. So I would say chia seeds kind of number 1, and avocado is my second. Avocado is like, to me, just the nutrient hormone powerhouse. I eat at least a half avocado every single day. So those would be the top 2. And then, the third would just be any type of fruit or veggie.
Well, and for those out there with little ones, I know like my daughters grew up on avocados. That was like one of their snacks that they loved to just mush on, because we did everything we could to keep them away from like traditional kid foods. And then eventually they go to school and stuff, and you're kind of like, you can only control so much. But that was like a go-to. And I'm, I know you've done like some content on, we'll come back to women's health, but just given, where you are in this stage of life with a 1-year-old, you've done some content about baby formulas and healthy eating for infants. Like, what are a couple tips you've given out to women as far as all of the above, have it be formula or snacks or things like that you're seeing be really effective as far as like infant health and related to that?
I think the number one thing that I push that I don't really hear anybody else push, it's kind of controversial, but I'm like, hey, this is my stand on it. But
Sure.
people tend to give kids, I say junk, because they can burn it off. And I hate when I hear anybody talk about, they're giving their kids, oh, just have candy and have chips and all that because they can burn it off. And I'm like, you can't burn off diabetes.
Right.
You can't burn off heart disease. Yes, I'm not concerned about my 1-year-old having a 6-pack. I'm
Right.
concerned about her gut health and those formulas, which I understand some women do not have the ability to produce breast milk and they have to do some type of formula. I'm not upset at them. I'm upset at the formula companies because I have looked at all of them out there and the healthiest ones available, even Whole Foods brands and stuff, have seed oils and chemicals and fillers because they're just trying to make it cheap. And so for me, I never wanted to do any type of processed foods or seed oils because, again, you look at the research, if we shouldn't eat them as adults because they say they cause Crohn's disease or gastrointestinal disease, PCOS, why am I going to give this to a baby who is just now developing their GI tract? So
Right.
it just didn't make sense to me when, these companies are pushing formulas on infants, and it's something I personally wouldn't even drink because I don't like the ingredients. I got a lot of flack and kickback because I put up a video about in my baby's milk, she wouldn't drink out of a bottle, up till 6 months because she wouldn't do it until I put like 1 teaspoon of chocolate protein powder in her breast milk. And she sucked the bottle down. And, as a mom, you understand, like, I'll do anything to get them to take a bottle and just be
Right.
quiet. So for me, I was like, oh, she just wants chocolate milk. And so many people like hated on me about how dare you give your
This one?
child
Was this it? You
protein
posted?
powder. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut
And
you
so
off.
it's like, listen, I understand. I wasn't giving her a full scoop. She's not getting 30 grams of protein in one
Right.
bottle.
Right.
Getting maybe like 3 grams of protein, right?
Right. Right.
But the scoop of Sun Warrior has cleaner, real food ingredients that you and I can understand and pronounce versus any formula on the market. And yet all these moms all of a sudden became pediatricians on me and wanted to tell me how terrible this was. And they wanted to unfollow. And I'm like, you don't even understand, do you read the backs of, the formula and things like this? But people are very, you want to give children French fries and ice cream. Nobody will say a word.
Right.
But you give them blended avocado and blended chicken. And they're like, now can their stomach take that protein? I'm like, you have no problem with me giving her French fries and ice cream.
Right.
But the second I want to feed her blended up whole foods, it's
Right.
like, are you sure they can handle that? It's kind of comical of what comes out of the woodwork when you talk about children, honestly.
Well, no, you're spot on because it's definitely like reframing. Like I remember, and I, my wife and I, we both when we had, I mean, our girls now are a little bit older, but early on, it was like reframing the way we looked at it because you just think, oh, it's got a baby picture on it, so therefore it's healthy. And then
Yeah.
I started reading it, and not that she did a really good job with some of the, I guess I'd say like front and center things, like as far as selecting the food and the qualities of foods and the sourcing of it. But then I would be like, "Hey, you bought this. Like, did you know it has this, this?" She's like, "Oh my gosh, like I wasn't even thinking because the front said this and this, and I was in a
Yes.
hurry and blah blah blah." And it was like, "Oh yeah, no, look at this." And then when we started to compare stuff we would never have as adults, like I'm like, I'm
Right.
245-pound male. I strength train multiple times a week. I do all kinds of other activities. And this has more sugar in it than I would fathom touching in a meal. And I'm going to
Yeah.
give it to my little 4-year-old at the time or whatever the case may be. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's like, no wonder childhood obesity is like through the roof. Like I didn't
Or
realize how much is loaded in it.
yeah, or the whole epidemic of everybody's ADHD as a child. You're
Mm,
like, you try to take 25 grams of sugar and then be told to sit still. You know what
yes.
I mean? It's like we're putting them donuts and not ice cream, but donuts and just cupcakes
Pastries
or
and yeah.
pastries, yeah, and sugary cereals, and then sending them to school to where they have to sit still. You're like, I would be bouncing off the walls with that much sugar,
Oh yeah.
and so it's just one of those things to where we're kind of trapping them in their own system here. And so, yes, I do love for her first birthday, I baked her gluten-free, sugar-free cupcakes. And, she doesn't have any type of ice creams or sugars. The only sugar she's ever been introduced to so far is fruits. And, I love that because she doesn't know what the other stuff is. So she's still able, when I've set down the avocado in front of her, she grabs it and eats it because, you give anybody the option between avocado or a piece of candy, we're all going to want the candy. So it's just, I think delaying it as much as possible. Like you said,
Right.
they're going to go to kids' houses, they're going to go to school. But I think if we can delay it as much as possible and have them develop their palate to just a healthier, wider variety, then when they become older, that's fine. I'm not against having any of that. It's just, I always say there's not bad food and good food. There's
Right.
nutrient dense food and less nutrient dense food. And we as adults and for our children, just try to fill up first on nutrient dense foods and then enjoy the others. That's all. It's not having it. It's just understanding the difference.
No, I mean it. You were saying something. Then one of your clips, I didn't have this plan, but there's another one I'm going to pull up in a second because now I'm like selfishly I want to talk about it as a tip that I'm going to steal from you. Um, so, but so my daughter, our oldest daughter, I have two, and our youngest is love her to death, but she's more aggressive and blunt and
It's
not
always
as.
that second child.
Yeah, she's definitely a little more opinionated, but my first is like a sweetheart. And I'll never forget when the neighbor's like, "I'm so sorry that, like, we offered her pizza and she was so sweet," and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't eat that because it's not healthy." And she was like 6 years old, and we're like right in front of their whole family. I'm like, "Oh, it's just like we didn't." You know what I mean? It was kinda like
Yeah,
little boy, they knew us and knew she's just,
that's funny though. I
little
mean, it's a
kid, but it's
good
like
thing. Yes.
calling out their whole family. "Geez, Lena," it's just
No,
like.
thank you.
But now she'll get down on some. But now we did switch the narrative, and I think this is important with, especially with kids, right? Where we talk about, you know, well, what's good fuel for an athlete? Because
Mhm.
both of them are in competitive sports now. They both love their sports. They want to be competitive, and we're like, well, is that good fuel? Like, I understand you want to get some ice cream today, but is that going to be good fuel for, you got 2 games this weekend, like your tournament tomorrow? Like,
Oh, that's an
so
awesome, like you said, narrative for children. Obviously, it resonates with us adults too, but I think
sure.
that spin for kids, so that way they're just thinking food is fuel. And we want to be fueled up for what we're doing. And then, like you said, yeah, we can have that other stuff once we're fueled properly. Then have a little bit of those treats.
Well, the post I was talking about that I want to mention so I can stop having my squirrel moment here, but
Oh,
so and people are probably gonna be like, "How did you not know this, Joe?" But no, the avocados in the water.
yes.
I've never done. So do you have to wait till they're ripe to do that?
Well, it's just, I found typically you buy a whole bag of avocados.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The first day you get them, all of them are hard as a rock. Okay. And
Yep.
then, 2 days later, they're all ripe at the same time. And unless you make a giant bowl of guacamole, by the next day, the other five are rotten. It's kind of like they all do it at the same time. So I learned this a while ago, but yes, if you take just when they're ripe, like you like them, and put them in, I just do a Tupperware or a bowl of water to where they're completely immersed, and I just store it in the fridge. Those
Nice.
will stay perfectly ripe for up to 2 weeks. So that way
Yeah.
we just pull one out, cut it, use it, and then the next day we pull another one. And it will blow your mind at how much money you save because you're not throwing away rotten avocados all the time. And yeah, it's the simplest thing. I do not know the science behind it. It's a time capsule in that water, but I will do it.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely stealing that because I'm constantly like, "Oh, dang it, I didn't eat it fast enough," or I'm definitely the one in the house where I'm like asking my wife, "Can I eat this?" She's like, I wouldn't.
I
So I either
wouldn't
get absolutely
smell
not, don't,
it.
because you're gonna get sick, or she'll say I wouldn't. I wouldn't usually means I can eat it, but she won't. But if
Right.
it's like do not eat that, I'm like, okay, dang it, because I'm like I'm the one that's like hate waste, and
Yeah.
even if it's getting sick. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, I got to stop looking at your recipes because it's addicting. Um, Back to the women's health topics. I wanted to circle back to resistance training.
Mm.
Um, how do you well, let me back up. Let's talk about myths first, if we could. I'm curious with women coming in, doing a consultation, meeting with you, talking to you about your, getting started with your coaching. What are some common myths or maybe things you see online that stick out to you in women's health from like a strength training, resistance training standpoint? What are some myths out there that you like to clear up?
Obviously, the number one myth of scaring women is lifting weights will make you bulky.
Sure.
We're all scared of that. And, it's always like as a coach, especially with a bodybuilding background, I'm like, don't flatter yourself, sweetie. Muscle is very hard to build. And you're not that 1%
Right.
that just develops overnight. You're okay. I think the myth, and not necessarily the myth, but the misconception is that if they have muscle, they'll look bulky. And the truth is, yeah, muscle with body fat over it will look bulky. The whole point is that if you just have muscle, the keys are you have naturally lower insulin, you have a faster metabolism, and you burn more calories while doing nothing. That is what muscle does. Now, if you eat incorrectly, yeah, you can put body fat over muscle, but it's the fat that makes you look bulky, not muscle. And I
Right.
think the number 2 myth is um, muscle weighs more than fat, right? No, a pound of muscle weighs the same as a pound of fat.
Right.
It's not like it's 1 pound weighs 2. No, it's the size and shape. 1 pound of muscle, I always love when people have that fat
Oh yeah.
silicone thing. I need to
Model.
order one
Yep.
of those, but it's like 1 pound of fat takes up this circumference.
Right.
1 pound of muscle takes up this circumference.
Right.
So it's not that, oh, well, I just weigh more because I have more muscle. It's the same myth as being big boned. We've heard that
Right.
for years. No, it's if you have more muscle, you'll look smaller because
Right.
your actual circumference of your body is going to be smaller. Muscle is lean, fat
Right.
is bulky.
Right.
So that's why you get into someone who is 150 pounds and 150 pounds, but you're 150 pounds at 10% body fat and 30%. You're going to
Right.
look so different. And that honestly is one of my favorite transformations is body recomp to
Yeah.
where I take a woman and she maybe loses 2 pounds. It's not like she loses, but we can trade out body fat for muscle. And the scale doesn't have to drop because as you're losing fat, we are building muscle. And I think that is one of the things that's another myth is that when you want to lose fat and burn muscle, you have to do one at a time. And most of the time, women think they'll come to me and say, well, I got to lose weight. And I'll send them a training plan and they'll go, no, 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 no. I want to focus on just fat loss first. So let me just do an hour of cardio and get my diet on point. And I'm like, you don't have to though. You can lose fat and build muscle at the same time.
Right.
It's just the right style of training and the right macros. And that's the beauty of it. And that's what I learned with the bodybuilding background. I think that's different than, let's say, a yoga or a Pilates or something that
Sure.
they are more focused on not really heavy strength training and more like just go for a hot girl walk
Right.
and just eat less. But as you see, that's why, sadly, no offense to CrossFitters, but that's why each zone has a different look because
Right.
they're all bodybuilding. You have to remember, bodybuilding is for anybody. You're building what shape you want. And Pilates will give you that, if you're 6 foot and just skinny, you'll have that Pilates yoga body. If you do CrossFit, you might look like SpongeBob,
Right.
because that's the style of training and eating that goes with that genre. For me, my style is the bikini athlete. It is lean and tone, but building an hourglass shape.
Right.
So one thing that I've always loved that's truly been a compliment to me, that when I have clients come to me, they're like, hey, like I chose you because I liked that you were muscular, but not overly muscular. And I like that you have a small waist, but you still have glutes. And I'm like, because you don't have to just be a muscle mommy or a Pilates queen.
Right.
You can do both. And it truly is just what you're eating and the style you're training. And you can create whatever shape you want.
No, I think it's a good point. I don't think we've talked about it much is unless someone's from the physique sports, like even men, like when I diet down, I'll get a lot of compliments about how big I am. And I'm like, I'm 15 pounds lighter, but it's the
Yeah.
illusion. And if you take that and just as an example for women out there, not big bulky shoulders, not masculine boulders here, but we're talking about, this, but just for the audience out there, like sculpting your shoulders makes your waist look smaller. Sculpting your hips, glutes, and
Mhm.
quads just a little bit even makes the waist look smaller. Like it pulls
Exactly.
everything together, like as you're mentioning the hourglass. And then like a lot of people, I think, don't make the connection too that like, yes, we can't spot reduce fat, but we can grow and improve the activation of muscles in certain parts. Like there's a lot of our core musculature that's responsible for pulling everything in.
Right. The
And it's
corset
like,
muscles.
oh, I've
Yeah.
personally seen it myself, or I've seen it in plenty of people where as soon as you're starting to, I call it just activation. I'll do some activation stuff where I like, look, I'm like, what is going on? Like, it looks like I
Yeah.
put on 7 pounds. Like, and it's like, no, I've been busy, just haven't really activated certain muscles. I can tell they're kind of turned off, if you will, or not as active. And then all of a sudden you get the blood circulation in there, get some things woken up. And then it's like, ooh, everything's kind of pulled in nice, a little
Yeah.
tighter. And it's, I think that's I'm obviously not a woman, but that's what I gather from them is that I'm associating the mirror, what I want to look. I'm going out on a date with my husband or whatever the case may be, with a number on a scale when
Mhm.
really you wouldn't even care about that if you put your dress on and you're like, boom,
Yeah.
I'm exactly the way I want to look. You don't give a crap. And nor just for the record, nor does your husband. He's never going to ask
Nobody
what's your
does.
weight. Nobody cares. Nobody
That's
cares.
what I like to ask my clients when they onboard with me is, they say, oh, I want to get to this weight. I say, why? What? Do you want to get to that weight because that's what you weighed in high school? Or do you want to get to that weight because you personally know at that weight you feel your best? Or do you just want to look better? And if we can take a magic number out of the equation, it helps them so much. For one, they're not obsessed with the scale. But number two, I think they just follow the process more. If it's not constantly in their head, I have to get down to a number. But if
Right.
I'm just focused on fueling my body, training for the shape I want, then it's like, look, you might look better at 140. You wanted to be 130, but at 130, you have no butt, you have no shape, and you're skinny fat.
Right.
So you don't like the way you look in your jeans.
Right.
Versus if we did focus on just fueling the body, strength training at 130, or like I said, 140, you might not like the number on the scale, but boy, do you and your husband love the way you look. And I think that's the misconception is
Right.
that we as women, I know, we have this magic number. Every one of us does. And it's like, you're not happy until you get to that number. Well, I've had clients come to me, they trained with me, they left to go do Ozempic or something like that. And guess what? Within 6 months, they were right back to me because they came to me and they said, you were right. I got to that number by, they say cheating. I got to that number by doing this. And they said, I hated the way I looked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, because you just went for weight loss and
Right.
you got to that number. And guess what? You weren't happy because you had no shape, you had no energy, you had no butt. And, that was it worth it? So that's another misconception. I think just women in general too have to get out of their head is that number on the scale might not always be exactly what you want. And going back to what you said, nobody, when you look good and someone says, oh my gosh, you look great, how much do you weigh? Nobody says that. Nobody cares how much you weigh. They don't see the number on the scale. Only you do. So it's one of those things where you're like, it's harder said than done, but it's just, you have to understand nobody cares about that. They see you physically. So that's what you should be monitoring, not trying to chase a number.
No, I mean, you're spot on. And I think too, for, if there's women out there that are listening to this or scrolling through and looking at different things and saying like, well, I mean, I want to look better, but I don't really need to as much. It's like, if you look the way we're describing in your 30s from a physique standpoint, hourglass, raised glutes, sculpted shoulders, tighter waist, etc. It's not all just about that. That's certainly a great confidence builder, aesthetically pleasing. You feel good. You feel, more formidable out in public, if you will. You can walk into any room, all the above, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing too that I found, that especially talking to women in their 50s and 60s, is like that you have to start. You can start whenever, but it's best to start sooner, because, for example, like functional glutes are going to look a certain way, which that's a big thing in women, is like glutes are the biceps for women, right? And so that's certainly, and aesthetically, that's their goal. However, a functional glute is going to keep you from having knee surgeries, back pain, all these other issues. Your hip, your hips, your pelvic floor, all those things are in a proper alignment, to where I think a lot of times too, it's like, well, I don't want to put all that work into, okay, I started going to the gym. I don't want to put all that work into it because I care, but I don't really care because I'm overweight. So I don't really care. Like, my butt's got so much, it's so big, it's got so much more to go. It's like, yeah, but make it functional at least. Like, if you can get your glutes to function properly, and hit them on the different, glute max, medius, et cetera, like in the different planes of motion, like that's going to help you 10, 20, 30 years from now as well, from a functional standpoint.
Exactly. And I've put up something on my page again, to where it was one of those, like, what you see versus what I see. And it was, a squat. You see a squat, and I see being able to bend down and pick up my daughter without back pain. That's, like what we're talking about, to where I tell my clients, this isn't about having six pack. This isn't about having abs. This is about getting your body healthy. Having the abs comes as a benefit to being healthy. It's not our goal, because, like you said, we're in 30s, 40s, 50s. They're not trying to walk around in a bikini.
Right.
They want to feel good. They want to feel confident. But this is a longevity game, especially us moms. You're like, when I, was pregnant and everything, and realizing postpartum, now you have baby and you've got to lift this car seat and throw it in, and you're holding the baby and you're holding the groceries. You're like, I realized I could not be a successful mom if I did not strength train.
Right.
This is hard work. And I have one, and multiple of my clients have toddlers and babies. And you're like, you better be lifting weights, you better be squatting, and you better understand a strong core, because if not, that's going to kick your butt being just a mom with everything we have to do. So that's the other side to my style of coaching, is preaching like, this is about getting the body healthy. Weight loss will follow, but unless you're striving first, like you said, just functional movements. And I even have women who are 65 plus, and they tell me, I love hearing, like, I was out gardening for hours, and guess what? I bent down, picked up, raked the yard, did all this, carried the mulch, and I don't hurt today, and I'm like, that to me as a coach, that is a successful win right there. It wasn't her leg lines, her ab lines, or, leaning out. It was, she functioned in her life and did not wake up sore the next day. And, I think that's hits closer to home to more people than we think, because even somebody who has a desk job, you realize how much that puts a toll on you, sitting still and your back. And then you go home and you try to do something and you like throw your back out because you just haven't been using it. So to go back to that, yes, I think it is just strength training is so important for any and everybody, just for a healthier, more stable life.
Oh yeah. Well, I know we've covered a lot of ground, but I did want to ask a question about like stress and sleep management and just some of the tips there you're seeing with in women's health. You know, what are some things that how are women coming to you? Is sleep a would you say a big issue and sleep and stress? And then what are some protocols or practices you try to implement that help women, being that that's one of your pillars, like with under the
Yeah.
umbrella of like sleep and stress management?
I think sleep again is on, that's why it's on the 5 pillars, because it's another one that we kind of take for granted. It's one of those like, oh, you rest day, but no one understands like the importance of it and why. And I found this out after having a baby. You have a newborn and you get maybe, I used to wear one of those Aura rings that tracked my sleep. And once I had a baby, I had to take it off because it was just depressing me because I didn't want to wake up and look at my score chart. And I didn't want to see that I only got 2 hours of sleep, because then it was mentally like draining me to think I knew how much I got.
Oh
So I
yeah.
stopped wearing it postpartum, because that's like what I think we talked at the beginning. I hopped right back on track. Like I had the baby, I waited 3 days and I started exercising and all that. So for me, it was like, it was frustrating because I did everything I knew as far as training, eating, but I was not getting sleep. And that wasn't on, wasn't my choice, but I saw the effect of that firsthand for 2 months straight. And I was so inflamed. My legs were watery. My arms were watery. My stomach had a layer of water and I was inflamed. And it was just that high cortisol from not sleeping.
Mm,
So now that going through that and realizing, hey, it wasn't because I was cheating on my diet. It wasn't because I wasn't being active enough. It literally was just because I couldn't sleep. I wasn't able to. So when I have these women come to me and I can see they send in their pictures and I can see that, look, it's not body fat. Like you're holding and like maybe 10 pounds of inflammation.
right.
And then the first thing I always ask is, how much sleep are you getting? And they're like, 4 or 5 hours, and it's either because they just wake up early, or it's because they have kids, or it's because, they get up and they have a, CEO type of job. And so for me, the first step we have to do before I write them a meal plan and a training plan, because that's the bonus to this. The first thing we have to do is get their sleep on track. And
Mhm.
that's another one, easier said than done, but things that we can do. Number one, not eating so close to dinner is something everybody should be practicing. On the weekends, I'm guilty of not following that because, you're staying up later. But typically weekdays for me, no eating past 8 p.m. is kind of my personal cutoff, because I like to
Sure.
go to bed around 10. So that gives you a good time. Because again, anytime you eat, even if it's protein, your cortisol spikes, your insulin spikes. And that's our whole body's mechanism and our clock is, as the sun goes down, cortisol goes down, melatonin rises. So that's how we are able to get into a deep sleep. But when I have women come to me and they have struggles with sleep, or they have that spike and they wake up at 2 a.m., that's a cortisol spike. That shouldn't be happening, but that's triggered. I always tell them, go back a couple hours. What did you eat? Because this doesn't happen for no reason. Your body sends signals. And so if you can trace back to, oh yeah, I had a glass of wine, or oh yeah, I had a cookie before bed, or oh, it could be something we don't even think about,
Right.
but that could be a reason. So I always tell them, number one, just, whatever that personal time is for when they go to bed, let's just say 2 hours before you go to bed, don't eat anything. Sip on some tea, keep drinking water and electrolytes is fine, but just no food, and try that. Number two would be take a magnesium supplement. Magnesium glycinate is great for helping to lower that stress, lower that cortisol, and get the body into more of a Zen stage. So that could be another thing that they could try.
Mhm.
Don't eat after 8. Take magnesium glycinate before bed, 500 milligrams, and you could get that at Walgreens. It's not anything that, you have to have a, big supplement for. But just those two things I think would be very beneficial for just someone starting out that says like, yeah, I think that's me. I think I'm holding a bunch of excess inflammation and stress, and then I'm not sleeping. Start there. And then, you can work past that. Another thing that they can add in that I know really helps is turmeric. I love the turmeric just powder, like literally the seasoning. I have a giant jar of it. I throw it in my electrolytes. I don't taste it. Maybe I don't taste it anymore because I'm used to it, but it's something that they offer in a capsule too. But even turmeric just helps lower inflammation in the body. And so that's another key thing that can help.
Yeah, no, it's great tips. Yeah. I know we covered a lot of ground today. I'm just, for people out there, I know you have a lot of different resources, as you mentioned. You have an app that they can engage with for coaching, and then you have other more, like, I guess you would say, like high touch or more interaction, coaching and all that. Tell everybody out there a little bit just about where they can find you, and a little bit about just an overarching kind of view of your services.
Yes, I am on basically every platform. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Handle is that tailored for you. So it's Taylor D_for_you. You can find me there with all my tips, tricks, and recipes. I do give away my free cookbooks all the time. So find a comment to post on, and I'll send you my cookbooks. But I'm also on YouTube. I just started my YouTube like 3 months ago. So, you're trying to get all the subscribers you can. I do full workouts on my YouTube. So it's like something that's either like quick 5-minute core, 10-minute full body. So I realize too, most women do work out from home. It is, again, probably like 80 to 20% workout from home and not a gym. So that's why I like to offer my YouTube is they have pull up full workouts to follow along to. But the greatest part is my coaching app. I offer a very like high ticket, hands-on, one-on-one. I truly talk to you every single day. It's one of those where like me diving into your life, helping you reschedule things, prioritize things, understanding your hormones, custom macros. We talk, I motivate you, I make adjustments. So it is like I hold your hand, I'm your bestie, I'm your training partner. And that's my one-on-one coaching. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't need their hand held, but they just don't know how to eat or what to train, then I offer my Taylor Gang Life app. And the app is more of a custom plan that I still put together for you, but then it's just on your time frame. So that one is not the one-on-one. That one's more just I give you guidance and then you go put it into action. So that would be more the starting program, would be the app. It's awesome. Food logs. You can go to a restaurant and log your meal from that restaurant. There's over 1,000 restaurants in there that you can log, and it'll calculate the rest of your meals to help you hit your goals. There's period trackers, step trackers. So that's a great entryway. If you're like, look, I don't really think I am up for the one-on-one coaching yet, that's like the first step. And then maybe you've done the app and you're like, look, I still can't get this to drop. I'm following it. Then I would say we step up to that one-on-one so I can truly do like an overhaul with you, and we can find maybe what's causing that plateau and break through it together. And sometimes I have clients who start on the app, they bump up to the one-on-one coaching for like 3 months. We get them past that, plateau, and then they drop back down to the app because then they just want the consistency and the accountability through the app. So it truly is just, I wanted to have something for every level to meet their need. And so that's what I love getting to do there.
No, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining the podcast today. A lot of great, insightful information. And for everybody out there, we will have all the links in the show notes. If you have any questions, be sure to put those in the comment section. We'll do our best to answer them or connect you directly with Taylor and her resources. But as always, thanks everybody for tuning in. And thanks so much, Taylor, for just a great episode and tons of amazing content for us. We really appreciate it.
Yes, I have loved being here and definitely enjoy all of this. So looking forward to talking with anybody in the comments.
All right. We'll see you guys. Thanks. Take care.